Okay, welcome everybody. It's 9:30 and I'm calling the meeting to order.
It dropped me.
So we will, has everybody had a chance to look at the documents that are in the file? You can click on them from the NCAC general, just the meeting notice about the Bylaws Committee, and you can go to all the documents we're going to be looking at today, including the agenda. So do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda? Okay, agenda we will proceed accordingly. Conflict of interest declarations, I have none that I know of.
Michael Beachley, I have none.
Tom Sipe, I have none.
Susan Schomburg, I have none.
Wyatt Angelo, I have none.
And Bill, I think you're still connecting to audio. I don't know if you can hear us. But we'll just go ahead and go on until you can get on. Thank you. So the next step is minutes. Thank you, Michael, for taking the minutes. Does anyone have any additions or corrections to the minutes?
I do have one correction. On the
Okay.
second page, under Article 1, it says that the name of the organization will retain the current name, which is written in the minutes as Nesquin Community Advisory Committee, and I believe it should be Nesquin Citizen Advisory Committee.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good catch. Thank you very much. I had not noticed that.
Me either. And I said with much embarrassment.
Okay, are there any further additions or corrections to the minutes? Yeah, that was kind of an important one, so thank you. Hearing no others, the minutes are approved as corrected, and we will post those final versions. Thank you. So we're starting with the chair's report. Looks like we have Bill now, or shortly. Good morning, Bill. You're muted, but I think you're on.
Yeah, I am. Good morning. I don't understand my computer. Sometimes it lets me listen through it. Sometimes I have to use my earphones. But
Okay,
it does remind me of a cartoon I saw last week in which two little kids were playing, and one said, "I can't stay long. I have to go home and help homeschool my grandparents on technology."
That's very good. I think a lot of us probably fall under that.
Sadly true, yeah.
Yeah. So Bill, the rest of us have reported conflict of interest.
I have none.
Did you? Okay, thank you. We can move on. So chair's report. I wanted to let you all know that Tom Sipe has been invited to present our document file naming standards and our document management system at the January 8th community plan meeting. And it's a community plan steering committee meeting. And his presentation is in the documents folder for this meeting. So I encourage you to go look at it. It's excellent. And if you have any comments, please get those to Tom.
Make sure I haven't lied about anything.
So I think it's great that the planning committee, I should get the name right, the Community Plan Steering Committee is interested in a lot of the things that we've been doing in terms of a document naming standard and how we're filing our documents and complying with Oregon public meeting law. So Tom will be a great resource for them, and it's a public meeting. You're welcome to sign up to hear this meeting, which I think will affect all of our properties. So I'll be there as well. So thank you, Tom, for doing that. Does anyone have any questions for Tom on that? So when you go in and you look, it'll show just 2 or 3 slides at the beginning that have links to our different documents that he'll be reporting on. And then if there are questions about other parts of what the Bylaws Committee has been doing, he has backup slides to be able to answer those questions. So Tom is, as usual, ultimately prepared. So thank you,
Well,
Tom.
we'll see about that. But I think there's probably a low probability that I'll get past the first couple of slides, given what they're discussing. But you never can tell. Sometimes there's interest and we go down a rabbit hole.
Right. So he will, I'm sure, represent us very well. And if you may have seen in the last email from the NCAC that they are trying out an executive board meeting. I think they're calling it an executive committee meeting. And they're doing that because we've been talking to them about that portion of the bylaws that we're thinking about writing, because there is no such entity now. And it would allow the board, the officers and committee chairmen and other interested parties to be able to talk about an agenda, not make any decisions or anything, but talk about things in maybe a little more depth than we would be able to talk about in an overall general meeting. And it will also be public, so the members of the public can join as well. So I'm very excited about this. I think it's a very positive step for them to try it out and see if they think it adds value to hold, say, a monthly meeting. So right now they're doing one. But they'll see if it adds value for them to not have to go one-on-one for every agenda item among themselves, like we've been doing for bylaws kinds of things, and comply with Oregon Public Meeting Law. So again, that's, I don't remember what the exact date of that meeting is. Maybe somebody else does, but it's in that email, and it's also on the upcoming events page of the NCAC website. They've also are forming a nominating committee, and that was something that has been in the bylaws to get formed as a standing committee. Tom and I will talk later on about whether we think that it needs to be a standing committee, but we're glad that they are actually getting it formed where people can apply to be on the committee. So if you're interested in looking for officers for next year, please apply. So that's all I had for my report. Well, I have one more. Sarah and I have been trying to get together to update on the various questions and action items that she has, but we have not actually connected. So I will be making a concerted effort between now and the next meeting, and hopefully we will have some updates for the next meeting. So does anyone have any questions for me before we go on? Okay, and Jude, I know you're new, but we will have opportunity for public comment at the end of our meeting, and welcome it. And
Okay.
Roger, you already know, so thank you. Okay, bylaws, and welcome back, Roger. So the bylaws committee webpage is the next part, and we have a committee. Don't have an input yet on the committee blog, so I have nothing new to update on that. We're still waiting on Sarah for that, although we have heard through the community plan steering committee that she's saying that the lawyer is saying no to that. So I'm hoping not. So we'll see. Public comment and input form. Tom, do you want to go through our proposed form for public comment on bylaws amendments? And I've allowed screen sharing for you, or I can do it, which I'm getting better at it.
Well, let me
I
see if I
think.
can get, and get that shared.
Do you have grandkids that have been tutoring you, Nancy?
You know, I don't, but
Oh, you're
I've
doing
been
this on
working
your
really
own?
hard on it.
I'm impressed.
Well, you haven't seen me do it yet, so
But
having.
Yeah, there it
Good-
is.
Yes,
point.
this is Tom, though. This is Tom doing this, but by having everything in the meetings folder, then I can just go from document to document I found. So it makes it a lot easier, I think.
Looks like the rendering on this is a little bit off. Anyway, I'll fix that. But essentially, it's just a formalized way of gathering input such that we make sure we get all of the input that we need in order to be able to consider people's comments. We want to be able to make sure that we understand there's a drop down there for which article they're talking about, or if it's a general comment, we'll date it and the name and email so we get this is a PDF form, by the way. So what they do is they can just fill it out. And my favorite trick of releasing the caps too late. Anyway, so we put a comment in, and then we save it as a as a PDF with a unique name. Proposing to require them to have the original text that they're not happy with and suggest what they would rather have. This gets us to specificity so that we're not, you say, well, I don't like the idea that, that shouldn't work that way, or there should be some vague description. We want to make sure that we actually get suggested text. Now, we may not always get what we want. And if we don't get everything we need, I think we'll make efforts to try to fill this out for ourselves. And this can be a record of input. And the reason for the formality of it is that once we get a formal input, then we can do as a committee, have a formal response. And that way someone can't go back and say, well, my input was not considered. So every effort will be made to not only document input, but document our response, which may be to accept it or maybe to decline it. I don't use the reject word, that's a little harsh, but we may decline some things. So that way we make sure that that our bases are covered in terms of any repercussions for people saying it wasn't fair. This is my proposal.
So Tom,
Yeah.
just a quickie, I hadn't noticed this until you were talking, but when it says original text, I wonder if we want to add original proposed text, because we want them to comment on our amendments, right? Or do we want to put that in parentheses? So it might be the original text of the current bylaws that are approved, or it could be they're commenting on our proposals.
Good point.
Now, why don't you change the word original to current bylaw text?
But it's not really current, is it?
Well,
Sure.
what I propose here is adding and I can actually edit this, which I won't use as the final, but at least so I can write down, edit a PDF. Okay. How about draft?
Yeah, okay.
And then current text.
Well, I'd say current draft.
Draft,
Yeah.
okay.
And bylaws committee current draft or something. I mean, that
Mhm.
makes it clear it's not the
Current
quote
draft
original.
text.
Yeah.
And then at the bottom, it should be Nescoin citizens, singular, not plural.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan. We'll get this.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Susan, you'd like to be the editor?
No, I
No,
just
that's
noticed
what we're
certain
all
things.
doing.
We're all doing it.
I think it's all good. It's all good.
I think this committee is self-selecting for people who look at details.
And appreciate it. Yes.
Yeah,
So I have
you're
a
tough
question.
audience.
Non-textual, Tom.
Yeah.
And understanding my tech deficiencies, and explain to me that this is a PDF, but
Yeah.
can you in fact click on these things in a PDF?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
You can click on them and enter them in. There are some organizations that do produce. Basically, it's a form.
Yes.
And
But
And so on that form, you can click and fill in.
Yeah.
It's a good question, Bill. Tom has Adobe Acrobat, so he can create fillable forms that allow you to go in and actually make the changes and save them into the
And
form.
then is there a button at the bottom that says click to submit or something?
No, basically it's a file. You just have to save it.
And then we have to go in and periodically look to see if anybody's done one.
Okay. I didn't quite understand your question.
Well, when and some citizen fills out the form,
okay.
and then they save it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they save it and they send it the instructions are to send it to Nancy, and then we will put it on our website.
Okay, so is there a button they click and it'll save and send, or is it a two-step process for them?
It
Just
would be a
thinking,
I don't know that there's a save and send or not, but that's an interesting question. I'll see whether or not there is.
I'm
It
just,
seemed like a reasonable thing.
Let me
but,
I'm
ask
just
you,
saying that the easier it is for people to do, the more likely it is they'll do it.
Well,
yeah.
So
let
I
me,
think Wyatt's next and then Michael.
okay.
I think
Save and
that's a good
send,
point, Bill.
if that does exist, I'll add it. If it doesn't, then I'll just leave the instructions as they are.
My concern and comment is that we are going to be posting this comment together with the name and email address of a person on our website.
Yep.
Well, I think it's important, and in bold print, we ought to put someplace that this is going to be made under Oregon law public, so that they understand that their comments are not privately addressed to the committee, number one. And secondly, under Oregon law, and maybe just as a matter of practicality, can we post this on our website without the contact information of the person who is contacting us or submitting this form to protect that portion of their privacy?
I think I feel very strongly that we have to identify the source of all our inputs in order to be able to conform to open laws. We can't have secret comments coming in from the side. I'm not a
We do
lawyer. I
have
can't
to-
say that
we-
it's true, but
Sarah's made it very clear that we do have to have the name, but I agree with you, Wyatt. I think if there's some way that we could hide the email or other information about the person, I think that may be kind of difficult to do, but if they're going to be emailing it to me, then we'll have their email.
yeah, but that means you need to keep a separate list of which emails belong to what things. And that just
True.
becomes an administrative hassle.
And the advisory about the fact that this is going to be made public, I think, is critical, and it should be in
Okay,
bold print.
I agree. I think that should be added.
What if we change the header to public comment form for NCAA
Public.
bylaws
I like
draft?
that.
That's a
think-
start.
I think-
I
How
still
about-
think the
yeah.
advisory is necessary.
How about
I agree.
member comment form, and then have in boldface note that this comment will be on the NCAC website that is open to the public.
Actually, anybody
are-
can make a
Are we
comment.
only taking member comments?
Right.
I think
We
so.
should be.
It should be member, not citizen. I changed that once.
Yeah. Okay, let's leave it public.
I'd
right?
rather
That'll-
not dilute the public part of it, because I think that I
Okay.
agree that is important. We put down Nesquin member name.
Maybe
And,
it should be NCAC member name.
you're right. Okay. Okay.
And what were you saying, Tom? You don't want to dilute public?
Well, I think rather than putting member up here, I'm a great believer in brevity. If we get too many words across the top, they wind up not being read. So public comment form for NCAC bylaws draft. I think that says all we need to say there.
So down in the next sentence where it says this form is intended to capture comments from NCAC members about the text of the NCAC bylaws, comma, and will be made, you can wordsmith me, but basically made available on the NCAC website per Oregon Public Meeting Law or something
I
there.
think in the abundance of caution, I'd like to make that a separate paragraph and bold it.
Okay.
And lawyers like to do that. So I emulate them sometimes.
But you can do it just by changing the bold text at the end of that sentence. You know, saying will be made
Oh, okay.
public on the, and will be made public on the, what did you say, Nancy, NCAC website or something?
Yes. Uh-huh.
I could say which will be. Uh,
Yeah, our two lawyers on the team are very helpful here.
Absolutely.
So Michael, you've been very patiently waiting. Thank you.
Yeah, my question is more mechanical, and that is what distinguishes this form as being unique from the next time somebody submits the same form?
we have the instructions here are to name it uniquely. Now, they may not do that, but that would be up to Nancy to do that. One person can't send in, probably will not send in two files with the same name, but Nancy may have to rename that.
Well, she
And
has
then
to
we'll
do
have
it
the
after.
date on it. I can see somebody sitting there, since we're having them do a separate form for each, say, paragraph or comment,
Yeah.
and doing 5 in a row. For example, Roger, you could do that, couldn't you? So I think a lot of people could, if they're looking at a whole article, they could break this down. So, or they could do, I mean, the way it's set up.
So each time it's sent, it is time-stamped? Is that what occurs?
It would be time-stamped on when it's received. If it's sent via email,
Yeah. We asked for a date received, and they're to fill that in. I did not find a way in this form to auto-generate the date.
so
But I
can
could
we,
look into it.
can we
Well, my
stick
only
in
concern
a
would be,
save?
yeah, my only concern would be that if it were sent in on the same day, let's say, for example, does it overwrite another one that's sent in on the same day?
We'll need to make sure that they are uniquely named. And that's unfortunately going to be up to Nancy to make sure that there's nothing that's named the same.
Right, I can resave the file each time to, reading what the topic is.
But I think, isn't he asking if it'll be automatically override the other one?
Well,
Yeah, it
the
shouldn't.
website will warn us that there's this would be a replacement, and that would be a cue to say, well, I need to rename this one.
So, Tom, is there a button that we could add to it to say save? Because I think people who
Yeah, well,
aren't used
I'm
to
gonna
Google
look into that.
Docs
I'm going to
might
look into
might have trouble figuring out where they go to save a document as I'm looking at the page.
Yes, they well, Adobe in their infinite wisdom has made it more difficult to save PDFs.
Mm-hmm. Like, how would you do it?
Actually, what you do is a Control S.
Oh,
Yeah, it's up here actually in the menu. You do a Save As, Shift
Okay.
Control S.
yeah. So I think we need to maybe
I
work on
think that's maybe this
making the
might not
canvas
be
a little
the
easier.
most recent version. I've changed some of these instructions,
Yeah,
and
I thought
also the
so.
fact that the member name was still not there.
Mm-hmm.
But this part is the same. It's the instructions, and we're gonna have to review those anyway. So I'll make sure that if I have the most current instructions.
Tom, one other really picky comment. This says date received, and since it's a person filling it out who's sending it, I would put date sent.
Good.
Tom, I have one other suggestion for drafting.
Mm-hmm.
In the first sentence, in order to be clear about what we're doing with their comment, I think my suggested wording would be which will be made public, without contact information on the NCAC website.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure about that. I personally think people should be open, and if this is a public thing, somebody wants to respond to
I
that.
could tell you, even the courts on public documents do not permit people's contact information, addresses, phone numbers, or
Okay.
identifiers on public documents.
All right. All right. I give up. I am completely, the illusion that there's any kind of privacy in the world, it astounds me.
It's
There
interesting
is no
because
privacy.
with the Tillamook County STR committees, they printed email addresses and all the letters and people's names during that process. So I don't know what Sarah Absher would advise us.
Okay, I'll add that to my list of questions for her.
Okay, so I give up. I will I'll maintain the illusion of privacy, which will be published on the NC without.
I think made public is the better phrase.
Without contact information.
Yeah.
Well, with name, I think they may assume that their name wouldn't be part of that contact information.
Well, their name is not contact information, I don't think.
Well, I would consider that to be contact information.
Well, I absolutely object to not having the name associated.
No, the name has to be there. I just want to make sure that it's clear to people that their name will be there.
Well, then just
Well,
put email
why don't
address.
say exactly, because that's the only contact information we're asking for.
Yeah.
Change information to address.
Okay. Is that a comment or just a trail off?
Well, it's a
He's
suggestion.
suggesting
I didn't
change
understand it
information
then.
in that last. Yeah, we are a
What do you
group
want
of
that to?
editors, aren't
What do you
we?
want
Yes.
that to be?
Address. And as long as we have you on the ropes, Tom, it wouldn't add any words to the header if you change public to member.
I thought you wanted public.
I thought we were only taking member comments.
Good point.
This is awesome now, except I would take out the "this is silly" just so you don't forget it later.
I will. This is
and-
actually, these are my notes. I'll go back to the original Word document, make the changes, and then recreate the form.
And that word "general" won't appear either, right? Or is that
It's
a
a
drop
drop
down?
down menu.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
Oh, I see that. Yeah, I see that.
the drop down doesn't work in edit mode, but yeah.
But when it's dropped down, does it have a article number or something?
yes.
Excellent. Good job.
All right. Any other comments on the form?
Looks good. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you all for your comments.
Okay, thanks, Tom. So when you get the revised form out, could you just let us know and we'll take a look. You and I can
have to
talk
do it
about
soon or
how.
else I'll forget. So
Right.
it should be out within the day.
All right, so what I'll do is update in this meeting, the updated form when you have it, and send a note out to each of you individually. And then Tom, why don't you and I talk a little bit about how we might, maybe we could talk to Jeff about how we can actually have a more, a button that can save and send or something like that to make it easier for people to get it to us. I don't know if there's an easy way to do that. That's beyond any technical capability I have.
Yeah, I talked to Jeff about it runs on Squarespace. Apparently, we have a very basic license,
Yeah.
and it doesn't do much.
Okay.
The preference, I would prefer that we have this as a web page input
Mm-hmm.
rather than having to go through the step of editing it. But
Mm-hmm.
that apparently is beyond the capabilities of the package we have.
Okay. I'll talk to him more about that too. I know it is quite basic. It'd be interesting to know how much it is to upgrade it. But I guess that
Yeah,
also
and-
adds complexity, and you have to have somebody who really knows what they're doing when you add
Yeah.
complexity. So, which he does, but it's not,
Yeah.
his successor might not.
It would, just to the question, it would be interesting to see if there are grants out there
Mhm.
that could supplement our budget such that we could afford a better package.
Mhm. Okay, thank
I'm
you.
going to take a grant writing class in a couple of weeks. So
Oh, wow,
that would
good.
be interesting. Is that a good idea? Not a good idea?
That's a great idea.
Maybe I think that's a bad idea. Okay.
Hey, Tom, you're just not doing enough for us, so, you know.
Oh, well, that's true. I gotta earn my keep. Else you fire me or cut my pay in half.
So, any other comments for Tom? How do you guys feel about the form? There's also just, people can just send a freewheeling email to me, and the instructions are if I don't respond in 24 hours that they can send it to Tom. So one of us will get back. And in terms of any kind of a response, there'll be an initial response just saying, thank you, we've received your input and we will consider it. And then once we've considered it, we'll respond back to them with what we've done. So
One more thing before we pass this, it's that I did want to make, if there's no alternate text, we may not formally respond. That doesn't mean we won't, but if we just said, somebody says the whole thing's trash, we can just kind of leave that without having to respond to that.
okay, thank you, Tom.
can-
I probably would follow up with people, but yes, I think that's probably a good sentence to have in there anyway.
That's
Okay,
that's to
I think
encourage completeness.
I think
Anyway,
most people will provide what they'd like to see.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
hopefully. Okay, well, thank you for all your work on that. And can we move on? We're not going to take a vote on the form yet.
I'm
'cause it's
happy to
still a
stop
work in
talking.
Okay, I meant for the committee. Did you have any more input for Tom? And okay, thank you. So on to bylaws article review. So we don't have much to do on Article 3 at this point because we're still waiting on Sarah for a bunch of input on it. But Tom did, as a result of the last meeting, go and clarify some of the maps to make them more obvious. And so, Tom, could you just show us your new map and people can take a look at that?
And this isn't something that was previously distributed, is that right, Nancy?
It was as of yesterday. It's on the website for today's meeting. So no, it was not previously distributed
Well,
before.
actually, the last two
yesterday.
versions, the version from December 15th, and then made a slight change yesterday. But this has been out for a couple of weeks. But the
That's
only
right.
there's no substantive change. What I've done here is just redrawn this, so I hope it is clear what we're talking about. And also, somebody who's colorblind could now make sure that we understand. Well, I mean, no, I'm embarrassed. I mean, I knew better. That's one of the things when I did editing for the IEEE, they said, you got to make sure that the people who are colorblind can understand the document. And so this, I think, is clearer as to what's being proposed.
We appreciate that.
And this is the current boundaries. as they exist, as best I can interpret them. As best I can interpret, we actually live right down here outside the thing. So unless we change that, I'm out of here. That's a threat. Okay, maybe
No,
not a
no.
good threat, but anyway. And so that's the proposal in red, and then the current boundaries as defined by boundaries of the village. Okay, so is that clear enough?
So it really clarifies to me how there's no east-west boundary at all. We could be, we could be having somebody considered a member halfway across the world, either east or west of us. And then the north and south boundaries are quite broad. So the green section is the current Nescoan zoning districts. And then the boundary in red is what Tom is proposing that we adapt to. So what we're waiting on is the GIS mapping of our current members as registered for the June election meeting, and see where they fall before we discuss it further. So this is basically just a clarification presentation. So any comments for Tom? He's worked quite hard on this.
I've looked at more maps of our area than I care to admit to.
Okay, well, thank you. We'll bring it up again in the next
Okay.
meeting.
So it's the current R7 version, and so there'll be no change this time.
Yeah, thank you.
And if I'm understanding correctly, we haven't adopted anything, but this one that I guess is red that goes out to the sea is the one that we're generally favoring.
At the moment, we have not taken a vote, but do you guys want to talk about that now, or do you want to wait till next meeting when we have more data?
I think I'd wait for the GIS.
Okay, I could open it up again. Okay, not.
I think we're okay. So Bill, if you have more questions about that red line, that is kind of how over the many meetings we've kind of gone to that red line is the most logical, but we have not taken a vote. We have, if you have other thoughts on that.
No,
please,
that's just,
please let us know.
I was recalling we had thought that was the most logical. I just was kind of confirming that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and that makes sense to me.
Great. And Tom, can you stop sharing the
I can stop
form?
sharing.
So now we're going to Article 8, Parliamentary Authority. And basically, Tom has taken Michael's input and put it into the format of the articles, the slideshow. Do you want to go? So, Michael, there was nothing changed, but the parliamentarian position was moved to officers. And so we'll be talking about officers at the next meeting, but we haven't changed anything you said. So the parliamentary authority section is quite short. So could you pull that up, Tom? Or do you want me to?
I thought you were going to do that one.
Oh, I'll try that. Let me try it.
Yeah.
As I bragged that I could figure this out.
Because I haven't actually looked at it since I messed with it.
Okay, I just have to go back to Bylaws Library, to meetings. Can you see what I'm doing on the screen? I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So it's pretty cool. Except I'm in, okay, so I'm in the right meeting.
Should be R3.
Article right here. So look at me. All right. So Michael has done, or excuse me, Tom has done these changes. So basically, the first slide of all of the articles is a title page. And then the purpose of the slide deck is the same for all of them, which is to present any possible changes. and then a brief description of what the article is. So it's governing our rules of operation. And there is parliamentary authority in the current bylaws. And okay, so Tom, on this one where you have the existing, okay, so the existing are currently approved bylaws that have been reformatted and
And to just
into the
add
Robert's
the,
Rules of Order format,
Yeah.
correct? And then we're adding that the NCAC parliamentarian will be the primary interpreter of the application of Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah.
Correct? Or is the existing the proposed wording that Michael had?
no, the existing is what's there.
Okay.
What's added is a new paragraph.
Okay. Okay, so any discussion on parliamentary authority?
Do we have any task forces that we're aware of?
Well,
We may in the future,
Yeah.
and rather than having to go back and add them, it's sort of accepted that, you know, we may have task forces, we may have any number of subsidiary organizations, all of which should be under the same parliamentary rules.
So aren't there contemplated or existing standing committees?
Well, not currently, but there certainly could be in the future.
I thought that was something we were talking about.
So,
I think Nancy was excited about a standing committee or something.
yeah,
Okay, we have
we're
two.
actually going to be talking about committees here in the next Article 7 later in the agenda. So yes, what we are proposing though, I think that we've talked about before, is that since the NCAC is a committee, really any committee under it should be a subcommittee. So that's
Would
why
that
the word subcommittees is in there rather than committees. And so some
that
of them are
in-
standing and some of them are special.
Could I respond to the existing? I
You
don't
bet.
think that that's what I wrote. I usually put in Robert's Rules of Order latest edition or something of that sort, which is typical, because there are many additions and there are many changes in Robert's rules over the years.
So
And so it's normally added after the words Rules of Order.
Yeah, it should be Robert's Rules of Order
no,
newly
actually,
revised 12.
let me counter that with the specific edition should be specified in the PMP because it may change.
Right, but it
Latest
should be
edition-
Robert's Rules of Order newly revised.
Newly
is the
revised,
official
yeah.
title, and that way it doesn't matter what the edition is.
Yeah.
It's always referred to as Robert's Rules of Order newly revised.
Secondly, continuing in that same sentence, shall be the governing rules, the operation. That doesn't make sense. There's some
Should be of the operation.
of the operation. Okay.
Okay.
Or for
I
the
think-
operation, maybe. Yeah, I would say for the operation.
I'm wondering if I should go ahead and start editing that.
Now that you point that out, it really isn't, it's for the conduct of meetings, is it not?
Good point. Yeah.
Not the operation of the NCAC.
Not necessarily. There are other aspects of business that are not simply meetings themselves.
Right.
Well, yes, like suggested bylaws, and we're not saying we're going to go lock, stock, and barrel for the suggested bylaws.
Seems to me the rules of operation are set by the county, are they not?
That's in there in terms of, well,
They're set by the county right here because this is a county document once it gets approved by them.
so Robert's Rules of Order, like Michael said, does incorporate more than just running a meeting. It incorporates how a committee operates. And so But that's a good point. The current bylaws haven't said anything about being under the auspices of the county direction, but we certainly are. We probably should add in Antelope County regulations or something like that.
Okay, do you want to go into edit mode on this, or do you want to do this offline?
We could do it offline.
Because I'm not capturing I'm not capturing the notes very well.
Michael, could you follow up with Tom on this as an
Yeah,
action item?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you. Let me go back and see if we had an earlier version of it. To get out into, you guys get a little draft thing on how we navigate. So article, parliamentary, see the different versions of it. So
Nope.
I don't see a change there. You can see each one is dated. But these are all the same date. Let's go look at this one. Yeah, something's gotten lost in here. So this is the existing, and then this is what
That's
we've
got, okay,
proposed.
I did not recall that correctly, but
So we're kind of losing that a little bit on what the actual existing bylaws say as we go through in these iterations. It looks like
yeah,
each iteration takes something that had been proposed in the previous one and makes that the existing. And so we
yes,
need to talk
that's
about
the,
that.
well, that's the philosophy. Otherwise, we're going to wind up with changes to changes to changes, and it's going to be
Right.
hard to understand. I thought we had agreement on that previous version that got accepted. Apparently we did
I
not.
thought we did too, but it is, I think somewhere, Tom, as we're using this template, we need to have the actual existing approved bylaws still in there, showing that we're making a change, and then have the latest update, or have an interim, like have the existing and then the latest existing and then this particular change. Does that make
You won't
sense?
be able to see that on the screen.
I know.
How about I put an addendum so we can refer back to it if we need to,
Okay.
because it's not all going to go on the same.
Yeah.
And when you say existing and latest existing, Nancy, we should keep our words, consistent and say latest draft.
Right. You're right.
Okay. As I make the changes, I'll do that. Change that to
Okay.
draft.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Better.
So that does show everybody, just because I have something in a meeting, that's the latest version to talk about in our meeting, but you can always go back into the bylaws library and then into article change discussions, and then it's got each article. So if we go into here, it's got each article of the bylaws that you can go in and see all the different iterations. So does that make sense? Do you guys, you can go in and check how we've made changes throughout. Okay, so Michael and Tom will work on a new version that we can approve next week or next meeting. Does that sound good?
Okay.
And sorry about that, Michael.
Well, that's okay. I mean, certainly understandable. That the addition of that paragraph, the new paragraph, I want to think about that one a little bit. That seems to me to be unnecessary. Once you have a parliamentarian, isn't it already pretty clear that that person interprets? Or is there a suggestion that somebody else is going to interpret? That's an
It's
interesting.
just making it clear to those who may not understand exactly what a parliamentarian does. It's only by there of courtesy.
Or if there is no parliamentarian for a meeting, there might be someone who's standing in, or a member who would like to discuss it.
Yeah, okay. I don't have any objection to it. It's just I've never seen that sort of thing into bylaws before, but that's, if you think that's important, then let's go ahead and do it.
Well, my recollection was that you had supplied that, so I
I
guess.
did? Oh, no, I didn't.
I think we talked about it at a meeting you weren't at, Michael. You had to leave. I think we
Oh,
talked
that's
about
what
it at the last
happened.
meeting.
See?
I think
There
so.
you go. There's a warning.
Yeah, that's right. No piano
I
playing
have
when
no
you're.
problem personally with not adding that. I don't care.
Yeah, it seems to me that that responsibility is implied in the position itself. It would be, let me give you a comparator, to identify the president or the chair of a meeting, and then add that the chair will
Run the
direct
meeting.
yeah, it's sort of it's sort of implied in the title itself. I don't care. It's just almost specious.
Okay, good point.
Well, we can delete it. It's easy to delete.
Well, and also the word primary implies there's a secondary or tertiary.
Right. I think the parliamentarian's role is to advise, and so if a chair would want to overrule what the parliamentarian says, they could do that, correct?
There is always a parliamentary rule that allows the assembly to overrule.
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't that
So
all
that would
covered in
be-
Robert's Rules of Order?
Yes, it
It
is.
is. So
Mhm.
you're right. It really
Yeah.
doesn't need to be in there.
Yeah.
Okay. So any objections to our taking that statement out? Okay. Good point. Thank you. Any other comments on parliamentary authority? We'll make those updates. That has, one of the earlier versions had the newly revised in it, so we'll get that
Yeah.
back in there too.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. And then Michael, if you go in and review under officers, Wyatt and I will be talking about that for the next meeting. We've moved your parliamentarian position into officers, so you can go in
Yeah,
at your leisure and look at that.
Yeah, I saw that, and the only comment, I don't have any objection to that at all. Typically, and this is personal as a parliamentarian, I don't regard parliamentarian as an officer, but as more as a servant. I mean, that's a personal thing. But as an officer, would not the parliamentarian then also be a member of the executive committee or the executive panel or whatever automatically and so on?
That's right.
Which is fine,
Yeah.
which is fine with me. I think that's, but that's a significant change, by the way. It's not a trivial change.
Right.
It's a significant change to add the parliamentarian as an officer of the organization.
It is, and there has not been such. But I guess in organizations I've been a part of, the parliamentarian has been an appointed officer as opposed to elected. In NCAC
Yeah,
case, it
yeah.
seems that really everything needs to be elected at some point. But and yes, it does mean that they would be serving for any type of meeting that would be the open to the full NCAC. So it doesn't mean that they would have to attend every committee meeting, but could be called upon if requested, by a committee to help with that.
Yeah, in assemblies where I have been parliamentarian, it has always been confirmed by a vote of the assembly, rather than just simply an appointment.
Right.
Okay, all right, that's all. I'm just sort of being picky here.
Yeah,
Okay.
just makes it a little bit cleaner, to
Yeah.
make an officer just logistically in the document,
Mhm, mhm.
since we
Right.
also want that person to be included in the executive committee. So
Mhm.
that
Okay,
makes it easy.
that's perfectly fine.
Thank you. Okay, so the next Article 4 I had on there as officers on the agenda, mainly to point out that the parliamentarian position has been added in there, but I'd like to just go ahead and defer that to the next meeting when Wyatt and I will have had a chance to update the rest of the officer section. And Tom has already gone in and done some boilerplate changes to that article. Thank you, Tom, to the template, putting in the existing information for officers. So it's in
I
there.
will be
So,
revising that today and substituting current draft with existing.
okay, thank you. Thank you. And then Wyatt and I will use that next week when we meet. Okay, so Article 7 subcommittees. Tom, can you let me stop sharing? And you can start unless you want me to share.
I can do it.
Okay.
Okay, lots of changes. That's a summary of the changes. Rather than going through the summary, I think it would be better just to go through the changes themselves. And so this, what's highlighted here on the left is, and the idea that you're going to submit a notice of interest to join a committee, to the nominations committee. Well, for one thing, as the bylaws currently exist, that is a null state because they were said to have been dissolved. We proposed to fix that, but there didn't seem to be any real reason to go through a nominations committee when it could be either just submitted to the chair or at a general meeting. Seemed like that wasn't necessary. And also makes a logistical problem if you have to create a nominations committee. You can't submit something to the nominations committee about the nominations committee.
So basically, we're recommending that it not be a standing committee.
That it be a standing committee, that it can be reconstituted. But that's elsewhere
Mm-hmm.
in this presentation. But having the nominations committee be a part of formation of subcommittees seems excessive.
Boy, I agree.
Yeah.
So they're kind of reserved for the high level
That's right.
functions. One thing I should note here that we wanted to make it easy for people to, let's see if I can do that without it. Something. Notice of interest must or should. I would like to have must, a brief biography indicating interest and or qualifications. That way, if somebody is at a meeting and they nominate themselves, it would be good to be able to have something which explains why they should be on a committee. Maybe we don't need to be that picky, but it seems like I like the idea that we, when our committee was formed, that we were given the opportunity to have a brief biography. You know, why you should be on the committee.
How about shall instead of must?
Okay. I'm okay with that. Actually, should have been shall.
Could have been.
Yeah, must.
It shall
Must.
be.
No, well,
Shall be shall.
Yeah. Must is a natural consequence, and shall is an imperative. It's an imperative. That's IEEE definitions. In the UK, it's different, by the way.
Okay, I'm somehow I'm stuck on the notion that the nominations committee is a standing committee.
That's in,
To me, a standing committee implies an imperative that the committee be constituted at all times. And
Yeah,
I've been in situations where the chair or the leadership has either ignored or missed the requirement that a standing committee be in place, and needed to change process during an assembly, and make sure that that committee is in place. So usually standing committees are ad hoc committees rather than standing. That's kind of my thinking, and I don't know, maybe you folks see it differently, and that's
Well,
okay with me too. I'm just raising that issue to make clarity.
okay, well, this is from the original. That's original. We didn't invent that.
Yeah.
Uh, Ad
That's
hoc,
why,
yeah. But the idea here is that the nominations committee gets dissolved, and if there is a vacancy, then according to the rest, other parts of the bylaws, then you would have to constitute a nominations committee, have that voted on, and then have them come up with a candidate and vote on that. That lengthens the process. Whereas if the nominations committee can be reconstituted, in other words, just called to order, said, you need to go do this, that takes a month or 2 months out of the process. And that's a significant shortening. And I don't think it hurts anything to say that they don't dissolve for a year. So,
yeah, I've kind of been going back and forth on this too, that because we don't necessarily set up a nominating committee at the beginning of the fiscal year. It's set up when it's time for them to start looking for officers. And I don't know, this implies
I mean,
that
they're having
it
to-
started
they're
at the
having-
beginning of the year, and maybe that's
Yeah.
what they need to do. When the bylaws committee is set up, the nominating committee is set up at the same time, and then they just don't do anything until it gets time for them to
But they would,
get
according to
constituted.
the Robert's Rules of Order, they would be continuing. But what they say is ordinary committees are two types: standing committees, which have a continuing existence, and special committees, which go out of existence as soon as they've completed a specified task.
Right.
and bylaws and nominations are of the class where you can't tell when you're going to need them. And so having them available readily without having to organize is an advantage. And that's the reason why you have standing committees. It's not, we wouldn't anticipate that they would meet, the nomination committee would meet, but they would be there. And in fact, you wouldn't have to have right now is calling for nominations committee representatives. That would already have been done.
Like in August. Mhm.
And it's easy to, and in terms of missing things, it's easier to miss that window when it's asynchronous to the annual cycle. Whereas if you have an annual cycle of establishing a new nominations committee, that's less likely to get skipped. Okay. So it sounds like, do we still have controversy?
Thinking, I realize you and I have discussed all this at length. I think that,
Well, the concept of standing committees in Robert's Rules is a permanent committee.
Mm-hmm.
It's considered permanent and continuing. It's an interesting. I'll research that if you will, but I don't want to get us into the situation where we have to do something that we're not necessarily meaning to do. Does that
Why
make
would we
sense?
not? Why would we not want to do that?
To make it a standing committee? Well,
Yeah.
out of requirement that at the beginning of each year, then we identify a standing committee or a nominations committee.
Well, we will have nominations every year.
Okay.
So-
Well, all right. Okay.
So
So,
the
yeah, we're
standing
gonna use
committee
them every
doesn't,
year.
the standing committee doesn't need to have regular meetings or anything. It's-
No.
True. Exactly. Of course.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea actually, as I'm thinking more about it, that we just go ahead and set everything up in August. But that's something we could put in the policies and procedures section later when these committees get set up, even if they're standing. Like the bylaws committee, I think it makes sense to have that set up at the beginning of each year, but I think we go on. There's more about when these committees get set up later on. Yeah.
Okay, we can look at the details. One thing also that's important about this slide is that we've sort of invented a communications committee as opposed to a communications coordinator. And you'll see the changes there, but that is an ongoing function. And I think pretty well falls into the idea of a standing committee. I mean, this is going to be not necessarily a committee that meets, but a committee that is active.
Right now, under the communications committee, which we'll get to here in another slide, but it's all falling under the secretary, Jeff Whitesell, and
This is all Jeff.
it's a huge job. It's a whole huge job, and he's mentioned that it might be helpful to have different people take on different aspects of it. So why don't we move on, Tom, and to the next slide.
Is that big enough for people to read?
Maybe make it a little bigger. Thank you.
Okay, where's the bar?
So you'll notice that we're now called a subcommittee. We've taken a step downward. Not really.
Yeah, that's too much. I'm looking for the bar.
I think you had it,
Okay, fair enough.
the left side that we can't read all of it.
Okay, so we can't see the that so
Existing.
much.
There.
Get rid
that's
of
good.
that.
Thank you. So the main difference in the first bullet is that the committee members themselves can't. We formalize that the committee members themselves can make recommendations to the bylaws, which remember we kind of had to struggle with a little bit because we weren't mentioned as being able to create our own input in the existing language. And then
once again,
clarifying some
yeah,
in the second bullet, clarifying that we can serve multiple terms should we want to apply again.
In the proposed change in the part that the sentence that starts, the members of the bylaws subcommittee shall be elected. The second sentence says, and serve a 1-year term from July and serve a 1-year term period.
Oh, thank you, Susan. Yes. Need to cut out that second one. It wouldn't be from July 1 though, right? Tom, I think, and it should just be and serve a 1-year term. Now, I've been thinking that we end June 30th because for us to continue on would be to present at the August meeting when the new group is supposed to be elected. So I don't know if we want to actually put that in there. That would really mean it's a standing committee completely, but I think we could just leave that blank. But just for my own purposes, I doubt that, I don't see us doing work in July or from the June NCAC meeting, but I don't know, maybe. I
Well,
guess that's,
We're
not
still
clear.
on this introduction slide, the one that's up.
we're on the bylaws subcommittee slide now, instead of all just subcommittees in general.
Can you put up the current slide we're talking about?
That's it.
Okay.
Can you see it, Bill?
It says Article 6 introduction.
No.
No, it says Article 7 bylaws subcommittee proposed.
That
Is anyone else
maybe
seeing Article 6
no,
introduction?
sorry, my bad.
Okay,
Gotta get back to the.
back to Zoom.
Well, yeah, no, I'm seeing
You just
Article 6.
click on your Zoom button.
I'm
Are you-
looking also at the proposed change in the one that starts, the members of the bylaw subcommittee shall be elected at the August general. Do we want to say meeting
Yeah,
after
Yes.
that?
And serve a 1-year term period.
Period. Mhm.
Do we want to say members of the bylaws subcommittee may be reelected to multiple terms?
either way, it says the same thing, I think.
Okay. And then the last bullet is the policies and procedures document will be recommended by the bylaws subcommittee and approved by the membership. So it's kind of the first time we're talking about this as it's separate from the bylaws, but it's an important piece of it. Sometimes we've called it standing rules, sometimes policies and procedures, but that's a document that we will be working on after we finish our bylaws review, and we can put in more detailed information about different areas.
Can
So-
we change will be to shall be?
Yes, thank you. And whoever has a vacuum cleaner running, can you please mute yourselves? Or a drill or something. There's some kind of a sound that's coming out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, well, let me, we had this discussion before, and forgive me if I've forgotten it, but we're the subcommittee of whom?
Of the NCAC, the NESCO Citizen Advisory Committee.
Okay, I thought that we were set up separately
No,
No.
because our earlier discussions were that it was a separate committee.
right. So in the current bylaws, all of the committees under the NCAC were separate.
Okay,
We're called committees,
yeah,
but in fact, they are under the auspices of the NCAC. And so since the NCAC is a committee, we
then
felt
these are
like
all subcommittees.
we should be
Okay.
subcommittees because
right.
we're not on the same level as the overall umbrella organization. So
So
the
would that now-
membership,
yeah.
the
Would that-
membership of the NCAC will vote on any proposals that.
But that
we
should
make
be
to them.
across the board then, is that right?
Correct.
Okay,
So there would be
so-
no other committees. Everything would be subcommittees under
So
the
the
umbrella.
nominations committee is actually a subcommittee.
That's
Correct.
correct.
Okay. And on
And the
all of the others-
communications,
Yes,
the
okay,
communications subcommittee,
okay.
the plan, the community plan,
Mhm,
wherever it is, the community plan steering committee would be a subcommittee.
mhm.
It would all be renamed to subcommittees.
Okay,
Nancy, I've got a question on the communications subcommittee.
Mhm.
And I'm going back and just something's hit me. If in fact we create a subcommittee for communications, i.e. giving Jeff some help about the tasks that he has, aren't they going to be required to operate under the open meetings law as opposed to additional
They will.
people to assist him? And do we really
Um,
want to do that?
So
Good
why don't
point.
we, well, so before we get, because we have a slide on the communications subcommittee, are there any other questions about the bylaws subcommittee, and we can move on to the next ones? Because, and well, just hold your question, Wyatt.
Yeah.
Okay. Any
Nancy,
other?
I finally caught up to the slide you were at, and I don't know it's not there now, but in this, where it says two, the first red one, did it get caught that and or the committee members should be subcommittee members?
Ah,
Yeah, oh, good one. Thank you.
Yeah, good catch.
Thank you. So it sounds, Bill, like you've pulled up your own documents from the website, correct? Rather than looking at the Zoom screen. Is that right?
I was, but I was looking at the Zoom screen when it was not current, but it's somehow now caught up. I was just going to leave the meeting and rejoin,
Okay.
and then it seems to have corrected itself.
Okay, good. So now you're looking at the actual Zoom screen, and you can see all of us sitting here too,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay, good. Good. Thank you for that catch. Okay.
by the way, I'm making live edits here, so
Yeah.
there won't be a change bar version of this since this is still up in the air. So since we're all here, just want to notify that what you're seeing in the screen is what's going to be the new version. I won't go back and do a change bar version
Okay. Thank you.
because I think it's
Okay.
still enough up in the air that we don't want to try
Right.
to freeze parts of it and not others.
So we need to move on, or we're going to need to extend the meeting time.
Probably both.
Probably both, yeah. Okay. Do you want to speak to this, Tom?
Okay, basically, we talked about this before, and the nominations committee if the nomination committee were dissolved after the election, then it would not be a standing committee. So we struck that in favor of leaving it as a standing committee and just clarified officer position. And then added the idea that if there's a vacancy, they just get reconvened. Maybe this is unnecessary, but
Oh, I think it's good. Because I think in some organizations, the executive board will fill in a vacancy. And so this specifies that they bring in the
okay,
nominated
good
committee
point.
again.
This tells us the nominations subcommittee. I got subcommittee everywhere. Yes. Is actually in charge of coming up with candidates for the officers.
Is there a new slide up now, Nancy?
There is.
Yes.
It's the nomination subcommittee, Bill.
I don't know
This
why
is
they're
so
not
strange. Is
changing.
anyone else not seeing the nomination subcommittee slide?
I'm still on the bylaws subcommittee one.
Susan, you're muted, I think you were trying to talk. But...
I'm sorry, I can see the current nomination subcommittee slide.
Okay. Bill, I don't know what to say.
I'm gonna exit and come back, but on the bylaws one, and it's maybe on the nominating one too. In some places, it's just called the subcommittee, and in other places, the bylaws subcommittee. It seems like we should just be consistent and either have the full name
Okay.
or just the other. Okay, I'm going to leave, but I'll be back.
Okay. Good point. So Tom, I think he's right. So like on this slide, on the first change, well, it's not the official thing, but if the subcommittee is dissolved after elections, I think we should probably clarify and say nominations subcommittee. Does anyone have a problem with nominations subcommittee as opposed to nominating subcommittee? I'm just used to nominating, so I think it's
I
just me.
don't, I
but-
think that's fine.
Okay.
But here I am caught again, shall be reconvened. What does that mean? Shall be, aren't they already convened at the beginning of the year as a standing committee then?
But they're not meeting. They're not scheduled meetings. So that's meant to be, they need to schedule a meeting. So they need to convene a meeting.
Oh, okay, okay, all right. That just seems to me to be implied that if the committee exists and there's a vacancy, that they will deal with that.
Yes,
So we
well, I
could
mean,
say, so we
this is
could say the nominations committee shall convene.
Or shall submit,
To-
shall submit.
Yeah.
I don't know that,
Mhm.
is there a requirement that we tell them they need to meet?
That's true. Okay.
well, they do.
Well, sure, but everybody needs to if they have business.
Okay, okay.
Right?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Uh,
Okay, I don't think Bill has joined us. Oh yeah, Bill is back. Hi, Bill. So
I'm back.
is there,
I
are,
gave you a big thumbs up.
are there any objections to extending the meeting time to 11:30? I hope not to take that much time, but are there any
None.
objections to doing that?
I have a 12 o'clock elsewhere, but that's okay with me. I can leave just a few minutes early if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So hearing no objections, we will extend the meeting to 11:30. And hopefully be done sooner. Those of you in the guests, can you stay to do public comment? Any objections to our extending the meeting? Would you prefer to do your public comment before 11? Okay, I'm not hearing any objections, so thank you. Looks like we have quite a group today, so thank you all for joining us. Okay, so back to you, Tom.
okay. Went on to the second page and
I don't like it.
I think I went too far. This is the communications subcommittee.
Yeah.
It would be
Okay.
real easy just to say the chair may appoint one or more communications coordinators instead of having a meeting that requires Jeff to publish a notice when he calls somebody up who's his assistant and saying, let's put out a press release.
Fair enough. So give me some text.
Well, I think I just did. The chair may appoint one or more communications coordinators.
So then it really needs to be somewhere other than committees if they're not going to function as a
Yeah.
subcommittee.
One or more members. One or more communications court.
Wouldn't Nancy, just as a matter of curiosity, would this go in policies and procedures?
Yes, it certainly could. I'm just sitting here thinking, because it seems like they wouldn't have to meet that often, but it might be helpful to have a committee of communication coordinators that do meet occasionally. And yes, they would have to set up a public meeting, but even if they were separate communications coordinators under Oregon Public Meeting Law, I don't think Jeff could meet with them as a group without having a public meeting. So I'm not sure it makes any real difference. It's just that, and we're not even saying that it would be Jeff that would be coordinating. It could be in a future group. The secretary wouldn't want to have anything to do with doing communications work. There might be a communications chair that would handle that function.
I'm not sure that I agree with that statement. It seems to me that if, for instance, if Jeff were paid as an employee of the committee,
Mhm.
and we had 2 employees of this committee that worked on communications,
Mhm.
that would not be required to be a public meeting under Oregon Public Meetings Law. And I don't see any distinction.
Not for
agree.
2, but for more than 2.
Now,
Well-
I agree. This is a work committee, isn't it? And
Maybe this is a task force.
well,
Well,
it could be a task force. Yeah, yeah. Or yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, all they're doing is chores, right? It seems to me like this would be saying, we'll have a committee who will set up the chairs in the meeting room before the meeting.
Yeah, this is not a policy group, is it?
No,
Okay,
Well,
so
But this,
could be.
this,
how so?
it's gonna set
Well,
up the website.
if they're figuring out how to set up the database, or I guess, I mean, it could be the bylaws committee doing that, but it seems like it would be, or,
I don't think that's policy.
Yeah,
okay.
I
and
think
and
that's
if,
execution.
yeah, and if they are putting together a database or whatever, do they need to take public comment on such a thing?
They can if they want, but they don't need to.
Well, yeah, but if they're a committee, then they need to.
Exactly.
I have
I
trouble.
disagree. I don't think being a committee means you have to be subject to public comment. I don't think
I
there's
think it's a
anything.
dangerous term to use.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not trying to defend that. I'm just saying that I don't
Yeah.
think that particular statement, I don't believe is correct. We thought about having this as a subcommittee. It needs to be an independent. We need to define a role. And this is a role which we believe is best served by multiple people rather than a single individual who does lots of other things. So this is a role that's being defined. So in that sense, it's a policy. Now, whether or not it's a subcommittee, a task force, I really don't care. But this role needs to be defined and was defined in the original bylaws.
Yeah, I
Yeah, in
get
the
that.
original
but
bylaws, it was under the secretary, officer description in all of this detail.
Actually, it was in a separate section, but referred to in the secretaries.
I think
Was it?
there's nothing wrong with the term coordinator, just one or more coordinators.
Well, coordinator is a single.
One or more
Uh,
coordinators with an S on the end.
Um, okay, I'm trying to think of the mechanics of putting together the document. We're in a subcommittee section. We don't
So-
really have
So Tom,
coordinators.
why don't you and I take this offline and we'll try to figure out because I think these points are valid. And I'll say it was primarily me that suggested putting it in as a subcommittee. So I will, I think these are good points. And Tom, why don't we figure out where we might be able to move it where it
Well,
wouldn't
we
have
can
to
move it
be.
into, we can move it if we want to define a coordinator,
Mhm.
just as if we wanted to define a parliamentarian, for instance, if
Mhm.
we didn't want it in the officers. We could put it in the Article X, which is other things.
It could also possibly be under executive board or executive committee, but I
or
don't
it
know
could
that
be
we
under,
want to have all these people have to attend an executive board.
it could also be under the responsibilities of the chair or the president.
Mhm.
And yeah, you see, because what we're doing here is raising the communications so-called subcommittee to a pretty high level of responsibility.
And in fact, that is our primary goal. Our primary
Right.
reason for existence is communications. It is important. This is all about communicating what people in Nesquin want to have happen. So push back on that. The coordination, communications is central to what we do.
It's one of the things that we were hearing a lot of feedback from members that they're not hearing about what we're doing. We're not open. This would help communicate everything in a very open way. But why don't we go ahead and move on, Tom, and you and I can
Okay.
go back and
We'll cogitate on that, see if we can come up
cogitate.
with a better. That's an important
So
word.
thank you for your input. Did anybody else have any comments on whether they thought it
Yeah,
should be a
yes.
subcommittee or not?
I would just say when you're cogitating, look at these 4 or 5 bullet points you have of what they're doing, and are those really in anything other than functions, even though the end result is important, as Tom points out. The description here, what this communications person does, is really just functionary.
Okay, thank you, Bill. We'll talk with Jeff more about this too.
Okay. He wasn't completely comfortable, by the way, with the formation of committee, so.
He may agree with you.
Okay. Other subcommittees?
Incidentally, just one more thing on that. Does that fall under the responsibilities of the nominations committee to fill those positions then?
Now, we excluded them from subcommittee nominations.
Okay, all right.
We excluded everybody from that. Everybody
Just
but the
strictly
officers.
officers for the nominations committee.
Okay,
That's what we're proposing.
that and okay, so a little bit of change to the other subcommittees. Just putting that the policies and procedures will have it will be documented or shall be documented. Anyway,
Shall.
Either way, I'm okay with that. Basically saying the charter, mission, and function, and that'll be documented in the policies and procedures. So we don't have, it's not a bylaws change, it's just a policies and procedures. And if we can do periodic cleanup. If the Y2K committee no longer meets, then we don't need to keep it in the policy and procedures.
So that's where, for example, the community plan subcommittee, steering subcommittee would be put under policies and procedures.
Yeah, and once again, this is under the openness and being very transparent as to what the organization is doing. So somebody's curious as to what our current policies are or what we're doing, they look at that document. And that'll be one that's relative, that's easy to change. We don't have to have committee, county approval for change.
So are you saying that this existing would remain and then you would add this other stuff?
Correct.
So what does this mean, the purpose and time of the subcommittee? What's the time? The duration or the
Good
well,
question.
time they meet, or what is that all about?
We
Yeah,
can change
good
this. Basically, I didn't modify.
I think the duration would probably be a better word.
Well,
Your
Or
duration.
term of the subcommittee?
Term is a good one. But you certainly don't want to include when they have to meet in the bylaws.
Right.
So term, I think, is a good solution. Good on you, Susan.
So as you're changing this, Tom, this existing part is in the current bylaws, so we need to make sure that we
Yeah.
put that over in proposed. Yeah.
I'm going to do a search for existing and replace it with current draft everywhere.
Okay.
I would say that the purpose and the term of each subcommittee, I would say.
Term of service.
Okay, let me do the each first. Okay, add term of service.
Yeah.
What does that add?
Right after term of service of each subcommittee.
See, term of service or just term?
Term of service. I would have put term of service.
Okay,
term
I ask
has-
again, what does
term-
that add?
Well, term has multiple meetings.
Does it? Okay.
Sure. Words
and-
are terms.
Okay.
Of,
Of.
Or og. It could be og.
I like og.
Could be.
and then while he's doing that, is this the first time this policies and procedures document has been mentioned?
No, we've mentioned it previously.
So then I would say the policies and procedures document.
And do we want to have the word document appear twice in one sentence?
Specify.
Articulate or determine,
Specify.
specify. There you go.
Should document in the first line be capitalized? Is that,
No, I don't think so.
then should policy and procedure both be lowercase?
Policy
Is
and
there something that's
procedures.
just called policies and procedures?
Yes, I believe that is
Oh,
correct.
okay. All right.
Is everybody not completely unhappy with that?
I got to think about some of it, Tom, and I'll communicate some thoughts to you. I'm just wrestling with some concepts about whether that we need to have all subcommittees, even of a limited scope, appointed by the membership or established by the membership. And again, that's maybe the question about what is a task force versus a subcommittee or something along those lines. And I'm not sure I have a comprehensive idea about what's best, but those are my questions.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand your questions, but I'll leave it to you to supply
Yeah.
some text.
Well,
Charter
I think,
seems,
yeah, I think that's a good point. If some subcommittees are established by the leadership and other subcommittees are established by the membership, why are they separated out? And how do we determine which ones are more appropriate
Okay, so
as the establishing body?
they're all committees are established by the membership in the sense that everything gets voted on.
Well, should they be?
oh, that's not, I don't think that's what Robert's rules say. I think it
No.
says the chair is going to appoint.
Uh, Well, Robert's rules allows that. If we can have rules which are more restrictive than Robert's rules, and that this would be more restrictive.
But should we? I mean, we have to have, there's a certain amount of practicality that involves in executing the purpose of the committee itself, and that is somewhat streamlining its operations to make them less cumbersome, but at the same time meeting what your concerns are, Tom. And I'm just not sure that anything other than, for instance, a committee that's appointed to create the picnic.
So I'm going to interrupt for a moment because I think Bill and Wyatt, you normally make, in a normal environment, I think you make good points that usually it's the chair that appoints, but in the case of the NCAC, it has been extremely contentious, and there have been accusations of appointments being made unfairly, and so they have erred, the current officers have erred on the side of having the membership elect and make decisions on everything. So it is not a typical Robert's Rules of Order situation. So so the bylaws currently, I think, are trying to reflect that desire on the part of both members and the officers that the members have the ability to be able to ratify and elect every member of a committee. And until things settle down where we might feel comfortable making that change, I think we need to err on the side of being more conservative and supporting that. So I know you two haven't been part of these NCAC meetings, and they are definitely going better this year. But there was even back in the June meeting, Sarah Absher attended and said that if things didn't settle down, she was going to disband the NCAC. So it's that critical. And so that's why we have been trying to follow that in these bylaws and make sure that we're erring on the side of member input for everything.
I'm convinced by your comments, Nancy, of course. My intent there is to differentiate between what the leadership may create and what the membership may create. And it seems to me that perhaps the leadership may create task forces or work groups. The membership may create subcommittees. Does that make sense?
I hear what you're saying, but I think the membership could very easily object to a task force being set up without their input. I know that seems strange, but
Yeah, it does.
it'll be interesting to hear from our guests on this when we get to public
Okay,
comment.
so
yeah.
just to kind of short circuit this a little bit, because we are really running out of
really
time.
late.
This is only about subcommittees. So task forces are
okay.
not actually mentioned at all.
Yeah. Okay.
We can create that can of worms if you like. But I'm not sure I want to go there. Okay.
So why don't we revisit that as well?
Okay, so I'm going to leave that highlighted.
Mhm.
There is a simple solution, which is to delete those 3 words.
I think it's important to keep it in there.
Okay, so we will continue on. And I think that's discussion of pros. Okay, I think I will solicit more inputs on this, and but I'd like to output a new version of it soon. So can people get it to me in a couple of days?
Yeah, what article was this?
This is
Article
7.
And Tom and I are working on this together. So if you could please also separately email me with any of your comments, since we can't have 3 of us in an email.
So I
Appreciate
agree
that.
with,
And thank you for all your input.
I agree with the principle, and it sure does make things awkward.
It does.
Tom, you're in the hot seat, and I appreciate you being there. You handle it well. None of this is personal. I'm sure you understand that.
I've had been in rooms with 300 engineers all shouting at me. So this is actually pretty mild.
And all claiming that none of it's personal.
Yeah, all claiming none of this is personal. Even when they mention my heredity and all that.
And we do very much appreciate all your comments on this.
Absolutely.
And thank you, Tom, for all your work to document all
Hopefully I've been gracious in accepting the changes. Okay.
You've been great.
Okay, so that does that.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next agenda item. Thank you all for your comments, and we'll bring this back at the next meeting.
I shall relinquish custody of the screen.
So I'm just going to quickly, hopefully, go into.
Okay. If I can say one more thing about that, I'm going to make the changes that I understand, and within an hour or so, post that one. And then, so please make comments on the revision 7, I think it is.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to briefly go through our project plan. We have now a new update on the name of the committee. Thank you, Susan. Bill and Tom are going to be working on section number 2 object to bring back. Do you guys think you might be able to bring that back to the next meeting?
Yeah, we missed each other this time. So, yeah, I think, Bill, you agree? Think we can do that?
You're muted, Bill.
Yes, I actually sent you a note this morning or last night with I think a single comment. But yes, we can do that, Nancy. I may not be able to be at that meeting. My wife's having some surgery and I might have to be around, but I can meet with Tom before, and he's certainly capable of conveying
Okay.
all my input.
Okay, thank you. And then, sorry. So then, on Article 3, I wish I could stop that phone, but I can't. Members, Tom and Wyatt, you guys are going to be working on, this is a substantial one. Have you been able to start on this one yet?
Remember?
Oh, no, Article 3, what am I talking
Yeah,
about? We've been talking about that every meeting. Never mind.
Yeah,
Gosh,
we're
brain
waiting on
freeze here.
input. Waiting on input.
Yes, thank you. Officers, Article 4, Bill and I are set to meet on Tuesday to discuss this, and hopefully we'll have something to present on at the next meeting. Susan and I are going to be meeting in the next week sometime to talk about meetings. And executive boards, Wyatt and I are meeting on Wednesday to do this new section. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we're just thrilled that they're going to try this out coming up this month. So to plan for the February NCAC general meeting. Subcommittees we're continuing to work on, and parliamentary authority. We'll have that. Michael and Tom are gonna get that slide up. I don't need to be involved with that. And then amending the bylaws. Michael, you're gonna be doing that sometime this coming month. Do you want to help her, or are you good with that?
I'm good with that. I think that's a pretty straightforward thing.
Okay, and then other bylaws provisions. Tom and Wyatt are going to work on that, and so have you guys had a chance? That's gonna be a big one. I have
Yeah,
simple,
but-
but Tom has told me it's not simple, so.
We're dumping some things into it, and so it really makes sense to do that last.
Yeah,
Okay,
I agree.
okay, so I'm gonna change that from simple to, what do you think, moderate?
Yeah, moderate.
But yeah,
Okay, sounds good. Any questions, comments on the project plan?
And the parliamentary authority is where the parliamentarian is discussed. Is that right?
No, it's in officers now.
Yeah,
So
but-
parliamentary
so is it-
authority is what we reviewed today. That was basically that we're using what Robert's Rules of Order, Oregon Public Meeting Law. We're
Okay.
adding Tillamook County to it, and there was another one.
Yeah, okay.
There was something else in there. I can't remember. So that's what we talked about. It's going to be
Yeah.
updated for the next meeting. It's a pretty simple one, but important.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that, and we are at public comment. So who would like to talk first? I want to welcome, since we started meeting, we have Hillary and Roger still here, and Tom, you've joined us. Thank you. Tom, we have a third Tom, Tom Prohodich.
Is there a Barbara also?
There was a Barbara. I don't. Oh, there you are, Barbara. You are there. Thank you. And then Jude had to leave us, so she was here earlier. So we had 5 guests today, a new record. So who would like to comment first? Would anyone like to comment?
I'll comment. This is Tom. Can I go ahead?
You bet, please. Thank you.
First of all, thank you again for your service. This is complicated, and I'm actually sitting here working on a legal brief, but I've listened the whole time. I have one recommendation, which is when I have my glasses off, I couldn't tell who was talking without looking at the screen, and Wyatt only shows from his glasses up. So that was a little, I finally now think I understand his voice. My comments are going to be about inclusivity and the opposite of that, which is exclusivity. I understand that your directive from Sarah is to create bylaws that will be as inclusive as possible. And I'll begin by saying I absolutely agree with Nancy's last comment. I think the current bylaws say that the chair, I think they say the chair will make nominations to committees, but the General Assembly will vote on any nominations. And in fact, that's what we did. That's what we've done in the last few meetings. And for exactly the reasons that she specified, I think that that's important to do, if not in the long run, at least in the short run. It may not be the most efficient way to do things, but I think it's a good idea. Second thing, the thing that most interests me is membership and voting, and we're still not quite there. I've only been a lawyer for about 33 years. I've been studying politics, voting decision rules, and voting rights since 1960. And I have written on them, I've lectured on them. I am concerned, and I know you're going to get, there's going to be pushback on the votes per property. Whether you do it as, and I understand that this is coming from Sarah. I'd like to hear Sarah weigh in on this, that to be inclusive when you get to properties and that are outside the residency status, that you either do it votes per property, which is what Roger recommended last time, or you do it voters per property. Either one of those voting rules may increase inclusivity for some, but could so overwhelm the voting that it would be exclusive as to others. It's an advantage for non-residents. If there is actually an example that there are 12 families that have a joint ownership of a single property that could have 24 votes, there's going to be a significant portion of most of the residents of Nesquin that will oppose that. And even votes per property, giving one vote, if you own 6, as I understand it here, if you own 6 properties, which you would get 6 votes. It may not be what Roger's thinking about, but as I'm thinking through this, even the founding fathers who really believed in property, George Washington, as far as I know, Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, James Madison didn't get a vote per property, nor would they have used the other mechanism. The history of the United States is including more people in voting, but not to the point of excluding others. And to me, what I would hope we can do is we have a forthright discussion about how we might compromise the various interests. I've run this past a few people, the voter by property and either one of these alternatives, and I won't say what they said, but it wasn't positive. But there's no doubt that we have to have property owners who are not residents here have a vote and have a say in what happens in Nesquin. And I know I'm a resident, but I firmly believe in that democratic principle. But anyway, I would like to hear what Sarah has to say. You can create any kind of voting decision rule that you want to, and there are many different kinds, subject to constitutional or statutory challenge. I'm not sure that what the NCAC does on its voting rules is ever going to be subject to any kind of legal challenge, but I'm not sure of that. So it would be best that there be some compromise, that some reasonable compromise about who can vote and who can't vote, that would give would be fair to all of the constituencies that exist in the community. the last thing I'll say, and this is exclusivity too, is I think I heard you say on the maps that the general feeling among you is that the red map is the better one. The only thing I'll say about that is that if you were to not take the red map, you would exclude some of the former officers of the NCAC and one current officer, because I don't think it includes Slab Creek Road. And I think, and Tom, Roger's agreeing with me. See, Roger, we agree on something. So anyway, but having said that, I mean, to me, the most important thing, I mean, begin with what Nancy said, which is that where the officers, and I think the bylaws support this too, at least the current bylaws, have moved to, you know, having the general membership vote on everything. Well, the foundation of that thought is voting. And that to me is going to be the most important consideration in going forward. And I know I've said something like this the last 2 times, but I would ask you, Nancy, if it's your responsibility, to talk to Sarah about this issue and have her either address it in this committee or address it more generally, because it's going to be coming up.
Yeah, I'm going to actually respond to that, even though I'm just supposed to sit here and listen. And thank you very much for your comments, Tom. So I want to clarify that Sarah has said very definitely that you cannot have multiple votes for a person. So if you have, say, 4 properties, you do not get 4 votes, you get 1. That's been very clear from her. Regarding the opposite, where you might have 24 people with 1 property, I actually sent that question to her via email for her to answer, because it does seem to be, as we're talking, she had originally, it sounded like, said that you still get 1 person, 1 vote, regardless of how many owners. But when it gets to be that much, it could end up potentially, if in most cases it wouldn't matter, but if there was a highly contentious issue, it could end up skewing potentially. So we're asking for her to weigh in on that, and we are inviting her to our next meeting. Hopefully she can make it, to talk about that very issue. So we have already put that in the pipeline to her. I don't think we had actually put it to her in that exact way of having something where you could even have 30 potential owners of 1 property. Maybe there would be something where those property owners could elect 2 to 3 or something like that, that we have something, or 4 or 5, who knows. But so that's one of the areas that we are definitely following up on. So thanks so much for your comments and for coming. Would anyone else like to speak?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I hate to brag, Tom, but I'm anything but a lawyer. But I do agree with you that I think there should be 1 vote per property, and that any property owner should only get 1 vote. You can have a designated voter per every property, but it would seem unfair. Like I said, in my own example, I would be 1 voter currently, but when I change to a family estate, that number could go up to 12, and that does not seem fair. Could someone please explain to me, it was my understanding that the current official boundary, as defined by the map, cannot be changed. I was told that Sarah said that. Is that true?
Let me address that, since I spent a lot of time studying maps. I believe what Sarah says is the village boundary as set by the county will not change. However, that is not necessarily the purview of the NCAC. They are not identical. She's been very clear. And it's up to us to decide whether they are identical or they're extended.
I would argue that they have to be identical. I cannot think, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but I can't think of any other situation where someone is allowed to vote on issues when they are not a member of an official district. That there is absolutely no question about the boundaries of the the Nesquin community boundary as defined by the map. The map is very specific. It's on the website. And so I do not see how you can possibly create a new map when you're talking about land use issues, zoning issues that are going to be decided by members of the Citizens Advisory Committee. It would seem essential that those people be citizens of that district. I know this is a very hard thing for your committee to do, but the whole idea of the bylaws committee is to correct the problems that have been present in the past, not accentuate them. And I find it kind of ironic that everyone is concerned about public meeting laws because they might, someone might challenge any decision of the NCAC, and yet would even consider someone being allowed to be a member when they do not live within the official boundary. I don't think I know I sound like a broken record, but I think that you're looking at a real, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but I would think that anything that's passed by people voting outside of that official boundary would certainly face a legal challenge, especially when you're talking about land use issues and zoning issues. And again, I'm talking as someone who would give anything to be able to withdraw from the Nesquin community boundary. But if it's an official boundary and if you can't withdraw, then we have to live with what we have. I also would like to, I agree with Tom, by the way. I think that if you think that we have anything close to privacy, you're totally delusional. That after 20 or 30 some years in medicine, I know that's not true. Also, on the last point about subcommittees and the officers, the officers' only authority, as I understand, is to communicate the wishes of the membership to the county. They really have no other authority, and therefore I think that all committees would have to be voted on by the membership. And one other thing that probably your committee has nothing to do with, but Nesquin's not exactly a destitute community, and it would seem that some of the costs of the NCAC, including your committee, should be covered by dues instead of by grants. I do not see why we do not have dues in the NCAC as we have in the NCA. Thanks for letting me comment today. And I cannot believe that I agree with Tom.
Okay, thank you, Roger. So we have run over. Are there any objections if we add another 10-minute? We'll go until 11:45 so we can hear everybody else's comments. Okay, we're extending the meeting and I think our secretary is left. So if somebody, Wyatt, could you take notes for the rest of the meeting, please?
Hey, can I do my public comment? I can be super
You
brief.
bet.
I don't know if there's a
Thank
time
you.
limit.
Thank you for your comments, Roger.
I don't know if there's
Appreciate
time
it.
limit for public comment. I just wanted to thank you guys for the bylaws committee. I can tell that you guys are putting a lot of good effort and work into doing this really difficult task with a lot of different moving parts. So thank you guys for that. I just wanted to say, I kind of reiterate what Roger said about limiting the kind of the map boundary to the, since the NCAC is land use, it makes sense that the boundary should follow the community boundary. And I like the idea of limiting one vote per property. Just that's, since it's tied to land use and not other things, the vote should be tied to the land. And, when you have a property with 12 people versus one person, it doesn't create a fair situation. So I support the one vote per property. And that's all for my comment. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you so much for coming, Hillary, and for your comments. I think Sarah and the county attorney are going to end up ultimately deciding how many votes per member or how many votes per property and all of that kind of thing, but definitely appreciate your input on that. Barbara, do you have anything you'd like to comment on?
Very quickly, will any decision about how voting can take place also be instituted for the other CACs in other unincorporated areas? I think that's one thing that we need to think about if we're making policy for people that don't have any say in what's going on here. I'd also like to mention that the purview of the CAC is not limited to land use issues. That's been fairly well documented over the past year. And so we can't limit that. I'd also like to say that the boundaries need to be very carefully constructed. The GIS maps that I looked at on the web while we were talking about this issue today show a good portion of the South Beach development is not included in that very sharp right angle that is portrayed on the website. And as Tom Prohodich mentioned, the boundary does not go up Slab Creek Road, where many of the former officers of this organization have resided. So I think there's still some care that needs to be exhibited in putting together a map, and I trust that this committee will take care of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your comments, Barbara. Just to answer that first question you have, I think what's happened in the past that we found is that when the NCAC first did our bylaws years ago, other CACs in the area adopted very similar bylaws to ours, so we may end up being a model. I understand from Mark, the chair of the NCAC, that all of the NCAC chairs meet. It's either bi-monthly, I think it might be monthly. And so they have been actually talking about our bylaws committee and these overall committees. So it could very well be that other CACs will look at their bylaws as a result of what we're doing, but we have no way of knowing. Our main thing is that Sarah and the county attorney are the ones that need to weigh in. And Sarah has been out there in previous meetings of ours saying that inclusivity is definitely favored over excluding. She will not change. She said there's no way that we can change the official urban boundary, even though we all agree that that would be a nice thing to do and make it consistent. But it's just too problematic in going back to past decisions that have been made that are official kinds of decisions. So they're just not going to do that. So Roger, while I understand you would like to see them consistent, we would too. That won't happen. So,
Okay.
but in terms of excluding versus including, we're hoping that as we get more data with the current membership, we'll be able to have something that makes some logical sense. Because you are right that it's not just land use that the NCAC deals with. Tom?
Okay. Yes, I just wanted to solicit if there are any other alternatives for boundaries other than those three that have been suggested, which is the existing, the red line, and the village line. If there's some modification of that which makes more sense, I would love to hear it.
Thank you. And if you do go into Article 3 on the website, on the Google Docs, you will see many, many, many iterations of the document with many, many, many different sets of maps that you can look at that we've looked at, and a number of them we've temporarily at least eliminated. So
yeah, I think revision 2 I think has the most selection.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you all for your comments. I appreciate that very much. Appreciate your attending the whole meeting. And I'm just going to summarize that we have a bunch of action items. Number 1 is getting hooked up with Sarah again to get some answers to these, and hopefully she'll be able to come to our next meeting. And then next meeting we are going to be reporting on many, many of these articles. So what I'm hoping is that we'll still have one more meeting after the next meeting before the NCAC February general meeting to prepare a presentation to them. But I'm hoping that by the February general meeting that we can have something to present in terms of some recommended changes other than just Article 1. And And then we can start showing, having feedback sessions. I had been calling them workshops, but Thomas suggested feedback sessions where we can go over in more detail and having more of a give and take on our actual recommendations between then and the April meeting. And I'm hoping that by the April meeting, we can actually have a set of bylaws ready to be voted on. So any comments on any of that? Okay, thank you for hanging in there as we've, I'm guessing the next meeting's going to go long too. But good luck with your wife's surgery, Bill, and meeting adjourned. I'm going to stop recording. Meeting adjourned at 11:40. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you very much.